You ever notice how some people always need to win conversations? They can't just talk, they have to dominate. Every sentence is a competition. Every silence feels like a threat. They argue, defend, interrupt, and somehow call it communication. But the truth is, communication isn't about winning, it's about connecting. Because when your goal is to win, you stop listening, you start performing. And people can feel that in your tone, your words, your eyes. The moment you try to prove you're right, you lose what really matters, understanding. And once understanding is gone, respect follows right behind it. So if you want to instantly improve your communication, stop trying to win it. Because the most powerful communicators aren't the loudest, aren't the smartest, and aren't the ones who always win. They're the ones who make others feel safe enough to be honest. Let's break this down. Listening is the loudest form of respect. You don't need a degree in psychology to understand that people don't remember most of what you say. They remember how you made them feel while you said it. And nothing makes someone feel more seen, more valued, more respected than when they realize you're actually listening, not waiting for your turn, not planning your next line, not pretending to care while your mind races to your defense. Just listening. That kind of silence has weight. It carries maturity, self-control, and confidence that doesn't need to perform. Most people think communication is about what you say. But the truth is, most of it happens before words are even spoken. Your eyes, your posture, your presence. They all tell a story. And when you're truly listening, people can feel it. They notice the difference between a quiet mouth and an attentive mind. They can sense whether your silence is indifference or intention. Listening is not passive. It's power disguised as patience. It's what separates people who argue to be right from those who communicate to be real. The best listeners aren't quiet because they're weak. They're quiet because they don't need to compete. They know that silence doesn't mean submission. It means observation. When you're calm enough to listen, you see things others miss. You notice tone shifts, body language, inconsistencies in stories. You catch the truth between the words. Because the truth rarely screams, it whispers. And you can only hear it when you're not too busy talking over it. When you listen, you gain something that arguments can't give you: understanding. You start to see the person, not just their point. You start to realize that behind every sharp word is usually a fear, an insecurity, or a need to be heard. And once you see that, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop matching their volume and start matching their emotion. That's what real emotional intelligence looks like. Hearing not just what's being said, but what's being meant. Listening isn't just about what you hear. It's about what you choose not to interrupt. Because every interruption says, my words matter more than yours. And every time you hold back, you send the opposite message. You matter enough for me to pause. That small shift in energy changes everything. It disarms defensiveness. It softens egos. It invites honesty. People open up to listeners because listening is rare. Most people spend their conversations building their next argument. But when you're the one who's fully present, they notice. They trust you. They listen back. Here's the truth most never realize: when you listen more, you actually gain more control in the conversation. Not through dominance, but through awareness. The person who listens controls the rhythm, the tone, and the depth of the exchange. They lead without forcing. They direct without pushing. That's what calm confidence looks like. Because when you don't rush to speak, you stop playing defense. You shift from reaction to reflection. And that's when you start influencing, not just replying. The loudest voice in the room often feels the most insecure. The one who can sit in silence, absorb what's said, and respond slowly. That's the person everyone starts listening to. Because their words, when they finally come, carry weight. They come from stillness, not noise. And people respect that. They lean in. They remember it. Listening also protects your peace. It saves you from unnecessary fights, wasted energy, and emotional exhaustion. You realize not every statement deserves your correction. Not every tone needs your response. Some people just want to be heard, not fixed, not challenged, not proven wrong. When you learn to listen, you stop carrying the burden of everyone's emotions. You stop personalizing their projection. You become a mirror, not a magnet. You reflect, you don't absorb. Think about how many arguments could have been avoided if someone had just paused and listened, not to reply, but to understand. How many relationships, friendships, even jobs could have been saved by a moment of calm listening instead of defensive talking. That's why listening isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It takes strength to stay still while your ego wants to fight. It takes self-control to be quiet when your pride wants to speak. Listening is a skill, but more than that, it's a reflection of your character. How you listen tells people everything about who you are. Do you care more about being understood or understanding others? Do you listen to fix or listen to feel? Because when you really start to listen, not just with your ears but with your presence, your entire communication changes. People trust you more, arguments shrink, respect grows, and that's how you instantly improve your communication, not by talking more, not by being louder, but by mastering the pause, the patience, and the power that comes from simply listening. Because listening, when done right, doesn't just make you a better communicator. It makes you the kind of person everyone wants to communicate with. You don't need to defend what's already true. That sentence alone carries a kind of peace most people spend their entire lives chasing. Think about it. The truth doesn't need your panic. It doesn't need your over-explaining or your emotional proof. The truth stands whether people accept it or not, whether they twist it, doubt it, or walk away from it. The truth doesn't crumble under misunderstanding. It waits calmly for time to reveal what ego tried to hide. We defend ourselves the hardest when we feel unseen. When someone questions our integrity, our words, our intentions, our instinct is to fight back, to prove, to clarify, to convince them that we're right. But here's what most people never realize: the more you rush to defend yourself, the more you teach others that their opinion of you has power. And that's how peace starts slipping away, one unnecessary argument at a time. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's trust. Not in the person across from you, but in the truth itself. Because truth doesn't need saving, it needs space. The people who misunderstand you will eventually see. The ones who twist your words will eventually expose themselves. And the ones meant to know your heart won't need paragraphs to believe it. You don't have to keep proving what's already been proven by your consistency. The truth doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't bend to make people comfortable. It simply is. And when you're grounded in that, you start communicating differently. You stop rushing to defend every rumor. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wishing you'd said more. You start realizing that peace is better than being understood by everyone. Because being understood by yourself, that's enough. Here's the thing. Defending yourself too much often sounds like doubt. The more energy you give to proving your point, the more people assume there's something to prove. That's why calm confidence is so powerful. It doesn't argue. It doesn't compete. It just sits in truth. And that stillness makes people pay attention. When someone accuses you and you don't react, that silence says more than any speech ever could. It says, I'm not here to convince. I'm here to stay aligned. Most people defend themselves because they mistake agreement for validation. They think if someone doesn't agree with them, their truth loses value. But that's not how truth works. Truth is not a debate, it's a mirror. It reflects who you are, not how others see you. Their doubt doesn't define your honesty. Their disbelief doesn't erase your effort. And their noise doesn't lower your worth. You learn this piece the hard way after realizing that no amount of explanation can make a person see what they refuse to. Some people don't misunderstand you accidentally, they misunderstand you intentionally. Because clarity takes away their control. And that's why calm people always seem untouchable. Not because life doesn't shake them, but because they stop trying to win where truth already won. There's freedom in not defending yourself. Freedom in simply saying your truth once and leaving it there. Freedom in not sending that extra message, not rewriting that paragraph, not raising your voice just to feel heard. You learn that peace doesn't live in being believed. It lives in knowing. Knowing who you are, knowing what you meant. Knowing what's real. And when you start operating from that knowing, you begin to attract different kinds of people. People who value calm over chaos, understanding over reaction, respect over rightness. You stop trying to explain your character to those committed to misunderstanding it. You start spending your energy on those who already see you clearly, not through your defense, but through your presence. You don't need to defend what's already true, because truth defends you. It does it quietly, slowly, and often without your help. Time has a way of revealing what words couldn't. Situations shift. Patterns repeat. People show who they really are. And when that happens, all the moments you stayed calm instead of defensive start to make sense. You realize that silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom waiting to prove itself. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to keep wasting it on misunderstanding. The truth doesn't demand noise. It demands patience. It's okay to let people think what they want. The truth can handle it. The truth doesn't panic when doubted. It doesn't change to be accepted. It just keeps being true over and over again until everyone else finally catches up. So breathe. Step back. You don't need to defend what's already true. Because when you know who you are and what's real, silence isn't surrender, it's self-respect. And peace, that's the real proof. Your tone speaks before your words ever do. Before your message lands, before your point is made, before your logic even has a chance to shine, your tone has already introduced you. It tells people how to feel about what you're saying before they even process the words. That's why some people can say something simple and be respected instantly, while others can say the same thing and still sound defensive, arrogant, or unsure. It's not always what you say, it's how you say it. Your tone is your emotional fingerprint. It carries more weight than volume, vocabulary, or clever phrasing. Because people don't remember exact sentences, they remember how you made them feel. You can have the most valid point in the world, but if your tone comes off as condescending, angry, or dismissive, no one will hear it. They'll just react to how you made them feel. That's the unspoken rule of communication most people never learn. Emotion always outruns logic. The truth is, tone is energy, and energy is contagious. When you speak with calm confidence, it draws people in. When you speak with tension, people brace themselves. When you speak with frustration, they stop listening and start defending. And once people start defending, communication ends. It becomes survival. The goal of confident communication isn't to dominate, it's to disarm. And your tone is what determines whether the conversation escalates or evolves. Think about it. You've met people who never raise their voice, but their words hit harder than anyone else's. They don't talk over others, they don't compete for attention, yet the room listens when they speak. Why? Because their tone carries authority without aggression. It's not about sounding powerful, it's about being grounded. Power isn't in shouting, it's in control. The more control you have over your tone, the less control others have over your emotions. Your tone also reflects your self-awareness. When you can stay composed even when someone's trying to provoke you, that's not weakness, it's mastery. Because anyone can sound confident when things are calm. But staying centered when someone's pushing your buttons, that's emotional discipline. That's how people start respecting you even when they disagree with you. The louder someone tries to pull you into chaos, the more powerful your calm becomes. We often underestimate how much tone shapes trust. You can say, "I understand," in a way that comforts someone, or in a way that cuts them off. You can say, "I'm fine," in a way that reassures, or in a way that screams you're not. The words stay the same, but the tone changes everything. It's the difference between listening to understand and listening to reply, between connecting and controlling, between communicating and performing. The key to mastering your tone isn't pretending to be calm when you're not. It's pausing before you speak. That pause gives your emotions a moment to settle, your thoughts a moment to align, and your tone a moment to reflect intention instead of impulse. Because once your words are out, they can't be taken back. And most of the time, it's not our message we regret. It's the tone we set it in. If your goal is to be heard, not just to talk, you have to understand that your tone either opens doors or builds walls. When your tone is warm, steady, and respectful, even hard truths can land softly. But when your tone is sharp or defensive, even good intentions sound like attacks. It's not about being fake, it's about being deliberate. Choosing calm doesn't mean you're suppressing emotion, it means you're guiding it. Your tone teaches people how to approach you. If you're always sharp, they'll tiptoe. If you're always dismissive, they'll withdraw. If you're calm and clear, they'll feel safe enough to be honest. And that's the foundation of strong communication, safety. People open up when they feel safe. And tone is what builds that safety before a single word even lands. Here's what most people get wrong. Tone isn't just in your voice, it's in your presence. It's in your posture, your pauses, your pace. It's how you breathe between sentences. It's the look in your eyes when you're listening. You can tell when someone's tone says, "I'm here to understand," and when it says, "I'm waiting to prove you wrong." People feel that energy instantly, and it's that invisible tone that decides whether they lean in or shut down. When you learn to control your tone, you start controlling outcomes. Arguments de-escalate faster. Misunderstandings turn into clarity. People who used to push your buttons stop trying. Because you no longer react, you respond. And that subtle shift changes everything. It turns tension into trust. It turns conflict into connection. It makes you someone people want to talk to, not someone they want to avoid. So the next time you speak, pay attention not to how loud you are, but to how aligned you are. Speak from calm, not chaos, from understanding, not ego. Because your tone introduces you before your words ever get the chance to. And when that tone is steady, grounded, and respectful, you don't just communicate, you lead. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Most people misunderstand silence. They see it as surrender, as if not speaking means losing ground. But real silence, the kind that comes from control, not fear, is one of the most powerful tools in communication. It's not the absence of words, it's the presence of awareness. Because when you're silent with intention, you're not backing down, you're observing, understanding, and deciding what actually deserves your energy. When emotions run high, silence becomes your greatest advantage. People who rush to fill every gap with noise usually reveal too much: what they fear, what they want, what they can't control. But the one who can stay still, stay quiet, stays in power. Silence is the pause between reaction and response, and that pause is where clarity is born. It's where you get to ask yourself, do I need to say this, or do I just want to win? In a heated moment, silence creates space for others to show who they really are, space for you to gather your thoughts, and space for truth to rise without being forced. The loudest person in the room often looks the weakest, because volume usually masks insecurity. Silence, on the other hand, signals composure. It tells people you don't need to rush or prove yourself. You already know who you are. You're not trying to dominate the conversation, you're directing it without even speaking. Silence also disarms manipulation. When someone tries to provoke you, they expect a reaction. That's their control tactic. They want you emotional, defensive, explaining yourself. But when you respond with calm silence, you break their rhythm. They lose the control they thought they had. It confuses them, frustrates them, even exposes them. Because manipulation thrives on noise, on chaos, on back and forth, on constant defense. When you go quiet, you take that away. But silence isn't about shutting down, it's about choosing moments that matter. It's knowing when to speak with impact rather than out of impulse. It's learning that not every question needs an answer, and not every attack deserves attention. Silence teaches patience. It trains your ego to step aside so your wisdom can lead. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is made without a single word. Silence also protects your peace. When you stop responding to every opinion, every argument, every provocation, you start saving energy for what actually moves you forward. You stop feeding the noise and start nurturing your strength, and people notice that. They sense that your silence isn't confusion, it's confidence. It's not that you don't care, it's that you've learned not to waste your calm on chaos. So no, silence isn't weakness. It's the discipline to stay grounded when others are losing control. It's the choice to hold your power instead of handing it over through words you'll regret. It's the art of knowing when your presence says more than your voice ever could. Because real strength doesn't shout, it waits, it watches, and when it finally speaks, everyone listens. Connection beats correction. Most people think communication is about being right, about proving your point, about fixing someone's misunderstanding, about teaching them a lesson. But real communication isn't about correction, it's about connection. You can win the argument and still lose the relationship. You can prove your point perfectly and still walk away empty because all you've built is distance. Connection is what changes people, not correction. When you focus on correction, you're trying to control, you're trying to make someone see what you see, think how you think, agree with what you believe. But connection doesn't force, it understands. It doesn't demand, it listens. It says, I don't have to change you to hear you. And that kind of energy, that's what disarms people. Because we live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, but very few people are willing to listen first. When you choose to connect instead of correct, you show maturity, not weakness, not surrender, but strength. There's a difference between talking to win and talking to grow. Talking to win leaves scars. Talking to grow builds bridges. And you can feel it when you're around someone who gets it. Someone who doesn't need to dominate the conversation to have influence. They stay calm. They ask questions. They let silence breathe. They don't try to fix every misunderstanding. They focus on keeping the respect alive. Because correction might change behavior for a moment, but connection changes hearts for a lifetime. If you want your words to matter, they need to be grounded in empathy. You can't speak to be understood until you first understand. That doesn't mean you agree with everything. It means you respect the human behind the words, even when the words aren't perfect. And here's the truth most people miss. You don't build influence by proving how right you are. You build it by making people feel safe enough to be honest with you. Correction builds walls. Connection builds trust, and trust. That's what gives your voice real power. Think about it. How many times have you corrected someone only for them to double down? How many times did your logic make them defensive instead of receptive? That's because people rarely accept correction when they feel judged. But when they feel understood, their walls start to lower. Their ego softens. Their heart opens. That's when real change begins. Not when you argue them into silence, but when you connect them into awareness. Connection doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you communicate from strength, not ego. You can still hold your boundaries, still speak your truth, but you do it with grace. You do it with self-control. You do it in a way that says, I'm not here to fight you, I'm here to understand what's really going on. And that shift, that confident shift, changes everything. It turns tension into understanding, and understanding into growth. If you want to improve your communication, stop trying to win every conversation. Because when your goal is to win, someone has to lose. But when your goal is to connect, both people grow. You don't have to correct every wrong assumption, every inaccurate detail, every emotional exaggeration. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes it's a nod, a pause, a breath that says, I hear you. When you start communicating from connection, not correction, you stop chasing validation and start earning respect. You'll notice people start opening up to you more. They'll trust you more. And you'll find that the peace you were trying to prove through arguments comes naturally through empathy. Because connection doesn't just improve communication, it transforms it. So as you move forward, remember this: you don't need to raise your voice to raise your impact. You don't need to fix everyone to feel fulfilled. Focus on connecting, not correcting. That's where real confidence lies. That's where peace begins. And that's how you become someone people listen to, not because you shout the loudest, but because your words come from a place of calm understanding. And here's your pro tip: before you speak, ask yourself, am I trying to connect or am I trying to correct? The answer will decide whether you build bridges or burn them. Choose connection, because in the end, that's what real communication and real power is all about.